I'll just go back to what I said during the meeting, which was there are a number of, let me just, as a backdrop, say that I think that it was awfully appropriate that we're in this room. Because if you think about what occurred here in Philadelphia so many years ago, folks came together not as Republicans or Democrats, ultimately not as folks from their own states, but as Americans. And so I think we had a legitimate conversation with indeed policy differences on things that we believe important going forward in America. What I raised, and I think it's again a sentiment shared by any number of Republicans, and I suspect Democrats as well, is indeed what Sarah just got at, which is, can we indeed solve a problem that was ultimately created by too much debt by adding yet more debt? And to give a sense of scale on that front, the world economy now is $67 trillion in size. The American economy is about $14 trillion in size. So when you talk about $150 billion, what you're talking about is adding about 1/5 of 1% in stimulus. And will that turn the economy around? We've been told for a long number of months that this stimulus, that stimulus, this stimulus, that stimulus would turn the economy around, and it hadn't. We were told that with the first issue of tax rebates of about $150 billion in size. Then it grew to about $2.3 trillion in size. Bloomberg now reports we're about $7 trillion in size in terms of stimulus. And so I think that there are very legitimate questions by any number of different folks, both represented in this group and certainly outside this room across America, on whether or not this will indeed make the difference. What I also raised was the importance of other forms of stimulus. The ultimate stimulus package for the United States of America is the entrepreneur with a dream working on the project of tomorrow. The ultimate stimulus package is, again, that market-based economy rather than a political economy wherein people come as simple plaintiffs to Washington, D.C. for yet more money. I made the point that one of the most important points with regard to stimulus is a stable dollar. And we're getting to that tipping point, if you will, wherein we could look at serious degradation in the dollar such that we would undermine the various stimulus that people are talking about out of Washington, D.C. That's particularly the case when you look at the debt levels and the spending levels now versus, for instance, 1930. I'd make two other quick points. One is, when we talk about stimulus, we cannot include trade. 80% of what occurs in the global economy occurs outside of America, which makes open trade incredibly important. It also makes this notion of competitiveness important. Something like card check is important in that larger notion of how well automotive companies, whether in Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina at the BMW plant, or elsewhere across this country, are able to compete with parts elsewhere in the world. Those were a couple of different points that I brought up. I'm sure there are many others by many other governors.